When will those who attack the President of the United States give him the credit he deserves? When will they understand that this man operates outside the box, which is why he's so damn successful in his private life and in his public life? Rather than tearing him apart and trashing him, maybe they ought to emulate him, because he gets more done in 1 hour than most people get done in an entire month. Now let's take a look at this. Panama. He said, give us the Panama Canal back. We built it. Our people died. We paid for it, and it's ours. And it was the dumbest thing to give that canal to the Panamanians. And he was right. Now, why did he say all those things? Well, they happen to be true, but Communist China was controlling both ends of the Panama Canal. Do they control both ends of the Panama Canal today? No. We do. So our fleets can get from the Pacific to the Atlantic, from the Atlantic to the Pacific, which was the point of the Panama Canal, without going all the way down around the Horn of South America. Now, the president looks at the map and he says, we got a big problem. The Communist Chinese and the Russians, they're building bases in the Arctic, military bases. How are we going to compete with that? How are we going to address that? Plus, I want to build this Iron Dome, the Golden Dome, and we need the space to do it. And he looks at Greenland and he says, Greenland is ripe for the taking by our enemies. They got about 12 people and 4 million goats up there. And of course, the Danes don't have the capacity to defend anything, including themselves. What do they have, 5 frigates? I don't know. It doesn't really matter. And so he says, well, we got to do something about this. He says, okay, we're going to take Greenland. Oh, everybody lose their mind. Yeah, we're going to take Greenland. We have Democrats running to Greenland saying, we stand with Greenland. You know, they stand with everybody who stands against us, because that's their nature. That's what they do. They're knee-jerk. But the president has a plan in mind. And the plan has worked out beautifully. And he goes to Davos, and everybody wants to talk to our president. Everyone wants photos with our president. Why? I mean, we're told that he's destroying all this magnificent international structure that we've built. No, he's rebuilding it and making it American-centric. That's what he's doing. And what happens? There's a negotiation that takes place, at least fundamentally. If the media is correct, we're going to have some bases now in Greenland that will be sovereign American territory so we can defend ourselves and the rest of the world that always depends on us anyway. So we're going to have some bases there, some docks there. And that was genius. And in addition to that, he secures our border, because the president understands securing the border is both an imperative from a domestic point of view and a national security point of view. People are pouring into this country who want to destroy it. People are being sent into this country by our enemies and by our adversaries, by the Communist Chinese, by countries in Africa, by countries in the Middle East, by countries south of the border. He says that's going to stop. And he stops it cold. Stops it cold. We debate on and on. We need legislation. This guy won't do this. This guy. He says, we're going to secure that border and shut it down. And he does it in like 30 or 60 days. Now he sees we have a problem. The people who were led into this country under the Biden regime. They were not only led into this country, they were literally flown into this country by the Biden regime from the Middle East and elsewhere. And this has created a huge problem. We literally have Islamists in our country who are openly preaching the overthrow of the United States of America. President Trump says, you know, this is going to stop. We have to deport people who hate our country. You come here, you love our country, you assimilate into our country, you show allegiance to our country. That's the way it's supposed to work. Immigration is supposed to work for the American people, not against the American people. That's been the way historically immigration is supposed to work. Foreigners don't have a right to come here and then try and destroy our country. And of course, he's up against the lower courts that are filled with left-wing Democrat lawyers in black robes, and he's fighting them, but it is a fight that has to be fought. It's fantastic, all national security related. You can't divide domestic and foreign policy. We have people on the far left, and we have the isolationists and the neo-fascists and the Marxist Islamists. Focus on affordability. Domestic and international relations are tied together, whether it's tariffs, whether it's immigration, whatever it is. You can't put one in a box and one in the other box. And by the way, the President of the United States on economic issues has done more than any president in my lifetime. He's done more than Franklin Roosevelt has done. And those tax cuts haven't even kicked in fully yet. They're going to kick in, and all the rest of it's going to kick in, and the economy is going to it's going to get much stronger than it is already. And then one of the Democrats going to complain about, oh, investigations and impeachment. That for another day. And so Davos was a huge success, as we knew it would be with our president. But that brings us to Iran, doesn't it? Iran. What are the quisling leaders in Europe doing about Iran? As far as we know, nothing. Now, they want a Palestinian state when Israel's fighting a war for its own survival against Islamist terrorists born of the Muslim Brotherhood that were funded and supported by our friends Qatar, funded and supported by our friends Turkey, and of course, funded and supported by Iran. But what about now? Why aren't they speaking up? Because it's hard. Because in order to resolve what's going on in Iran is difficult. It's not easy. You're not pounding a democracy, an ally. You're talking about an enemy, an Islamist Nazi regime. That's a lot harder to deal with than a friendly democracy that you keep beating up on and beating up on and beating up on, isn't it? Well, let's talk about Iran now, because I believe we need to help those people as quickly as we can. And it's not so easy, but it has to be done. And in helping those people, what did I say? Foreign policy relates to domestic policy. We're helping ourselves. Why? Well, I just read in the paper a few days ago that regime in Iran has tested a missile, an intercontinental ballistic missile that goes 10,000 miles. Remember we used to say, that's 7,000 miles away. That's not our problem. 10,000 miles. Now, why would they be developing technology on missiles that can go 10,000 miles? Because it hits Washington, D.C., hits the entire East Coast. That's why. And the problem for us, America, we're not going to always have Donald Trump as commander-in-chief. We're not going to always have him as our president. Every president before Donald Trump said, no nukes for Iran, and did absolutely nothing. In fact, in the case of Obama, he signed a deal that would ensure they'd have nuclear weapons in 10 years. President Trump signed the retraction of it and handed me the pen, by the way, that has been framed and is hanging on my wall. That's right. Joe Biden, he had a great idea. Let's fund the Iranian regime. Let's give them billions of dollars in relief, and that way we'll buy their support. Of course, it's an Islamist Nazi regime. They take your money and they use it against us. And of course, that regime is working with Communist China. Communist China now is delivering ballistic missiles to them as fast as they possibly can. Of course, they're working with Russia. They've given Russia drones to attack the wonderful people in Ukraine and kill as many of them as possible. And yes, I support Ukraine. Yes, I do. Yes, I do. I admit it. Iran has interests far beyond its borders, and we are enemy number one. They've tried to assassinate our president 2 or 3 times, and they've threatened to kill our president in the last 3 weeks 5 times. Does that tick anybody off? Does that tick us off? It ticks me off. No regime should be able to threaten our president and still exist. The idea that if they kill our president, we will wipe them off the map, excuse me, they don't get to kill our president. That regime needs to be wiped off the map now. That's right, I said it. So let's start right there. What is it about this regime that withstands these protests, these people rising up? How is it possible that when you have the vast majority of people in Iran who want to be free, that they can't overcome the power of this Islamist Nazi regime? Well, I'm going to read something to you. This opened my eyes. This is in the Middle East Forum, written by Saeed Golkar, in part. The Islamic Republic today functions as a theocratic security regime organized around Ayatollah Ali Khamenei and his family. Power is structured in concentric circles, with Khomeini and his immediate family at the center. Authority is highly personalized, and political survival depends less on formal institutions than on proximity to the supreme leader himself and his sons. It's run like a mob organization, a mafia that controls an entire country. Khomeini's leadership is defined by rigidity, discipline, and a deep sense of personal mission. He views himself not simply as a political authority, but as a guardian entrusted with a divine responsibility to preserve the Islamic Republic, a belief that leaves little room for hesitation or compromise during crises. And since assuming the position of supreme leader in 1989, he has steadily transformed the system into a theocratic security state that privileges coercion over popular consent, relying on a highly institutionalized and ideologically committed repressive apparatus. So here you have a man who has used Islam as a justification for his power and turns it, claiming that the reason he's in power is to protect Islam. The structural reality, more than public sentiment, sets the boundaries of political change in Iran today and reflects a leader who prioritizes regime survival. I would say his survival and that of his sons. Immediately surrounding the core, the family, is the Beit et Rabari, or Office of the Supreme Leader, the most powerful and least visible institution in the Islamic Republic. Khomeini's Beit operates in practice as the regime's actual executive authority. So he has this personal Politburo that's in control of everything. Everything. Over the past 3 decades, it has evolved into a vast and opaque parallel state that sits above the Constitution, the Parliament, and the presidency, staffed by thousands of loyal clerics, security officials, and ideological technocrats. The Beit shapes decision-making across military, intelligence, economic, judicial, and cultural domains. Rather than governing through impersonal rules or institutional checks, Khomeini governs through trusted individuals embedded across the state. The Beit also serves as the primary channel through which Khomeini's family, particularly his sons, exercise influence, turning it into both an institutional and familial center of authority. The Beit is not merely an extension of Khomeini's authority, it is the mechanism that allows his rule to endure, absorb shocks, and operate without constant visibility. And surrounding the Beit, the inner circle, is an extensive clerical network that confers religious legitimacy on that system. Through seminaries, Friday prayer leaders, provincial representatives, and regime-aligned senior clerics, Khomeini's authority is presented as divinely sanctioned. He is portrayed not merely as a political leader, but as the representative of the hidden imam. And this theological framing converts obedience into a religious duty and recasts repression as a moral necessity rather than a political choice. Clerical institutions such as the Assembly of Experts and the Guardian Council reinforce this sacred legitimacy while actively disciplining dissent within the religious establishment itself. It goes on. Beyond the clerical layer lies the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC, and the broader security apparatus, forming the regime's coercive shield. Created to defend the Islamic Republic, the IRGC's primary mission since 1979 has been regime protection, preventing coups, suppressing dissent, and shielding the supreme leader. Over time, it evolved into a Praetorian Guard, extending beyond military functions into a multi-branch security organization with intelligence, expeditionary units, and the Basaj militia, each deeply embedded in society. The IRGC structure aims to contain unrest through decentralization, provincial commands, combining the IRGC, Basij, and local security forces, and it goes on. So what do we do now? Our great president is muscling up like never before. The USS Abraham Lincoln Carrier Strike Group expected to arrive in the Arabian Sea or Persian Gulf in the next few days. Its air wing includes F-35C Lightning II and FA-18EF Super Hornet squadrons, EA-18G Growler electronic warfare aircraft, this is all public, E-2D Advanced Hawkeye AEW and CMV-22B Osprey tilt rotors. Escort ships, the strike group includes 3 Arleigh Burke-class destroyers and guided missile cruiser USS Mobile Bay, at least one Virginia-class nuclear-powered attack submarine, potentially an Ohio-class guided missile submarine are expected in the area. Strategic bombers, 2 B-2 Spirit stealth bombers, were reported departing the U.S. mainland for the region. Multiple air defense systems and so forth. So it's a massive presence. Also C-17 Globemaster III cargo jets, KC-135 Strato tankers, and KC-46A Pegasus aerial refuelers. Additional M1A2 Abrams tanks, M2 Bradley fighting vehicles, and so forth and so on to protect our base there. So given all the information I've just given to you, and of course the president has much more, the head of the snake needs to be destroyed. With all our muscle power and so forth. The pyramid, not the edges of the pyramid, not even the center of the pyramid, the top of the pyramid. Khomeini, his family, and that inner circle needs to be taken out by our armed forces. It's not an easy task. In addition, they still have ballistic missiles, maybe 1,000, to hit us, to hit the Israelis, and so forth and so on, which is why Israel needed time to have defensive missile systems in place, why we needed time to have our defensive missiles in place, to have our offensive activity ready and our defensive activity ready. And I believe the President of the United States, he'll have a number of decisions to make. He will make the right decision. This regime needs to be taken out. Those people live in basically what is a concentration camp. Tens of millions of them who want to be free, who want to work with the United States of America and the rest of the free world, who are being slaughtered in the most horrific ways, particularly the women, particularly teenagers. It just goes on. And this regime will not go away unless we make it go away with their 10,000-mile ICBM and nuclear warheads in the future. It's weaker now than it's ever been. This is a very difficult task, but a task it is. And I am certain the President of the United States will do what he said. And I'm certain he's the only one who can do what he said. This is righteous, complicated, daunting, necessary, compelled, and righteous.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.